Hey everybody, we are back again for a 2021-2022 NHL season preview, and today we are going to be looking at the Vancouver Canucks. They got their big boys signed, Quinn Hughes and Elias Pettersson, both back for Vancouver, and this is going to be a big year for the Canucks. They're looking for a huge bounce back after a very, very tough 2021 season for them. A lot of different factors went into that, had a lot of COVID issues, and last year definitely kind of just seems like a throwaway for Vancouver. They need to get back to taking that next step forward into the playoffs and trying to be a competitive team in the Western Conference with all of this young talent that they have. So it's a very important year for the Canucks. It's going to be interesting to see how they do. And they've made quite a few changes this offseason that we're going to be going over as well. So before we get into it, I just ask you, please hit that subscribe button and thumbs up. It helps the channel a ton and is greatly appreciated. But let's get started here. And before we look forward, we have to look back. As always, last season, and this was a really, really bad one for the Canucks. They went 23, 29, and 4. 50 points on the season, and they finished in 7th place, dead last in the North Division. They only scored 2.64 goals for per game, which is, given the talent that they have, an unacceptable number. And defensively, they were pretty darn bad, giving up 3.34 goals against per game. Just all around need to be significantly better this season. Their power play wasn't very good. Again, unacceptable given the amount of talent that they have on this roster. Just 17.4% on the power play. Their penalty kill was average, 79.8% on the PK, which is acceptable. That's pretty middle of the road there for the penalty kill. Now, I will say this about Vancouver, though, is I do think last year was very much a throwaway. Pettersson missed a lot of the year with injury. They had a lot of injury problems in general with this team, and they had major COVID problems. They basically, if you remember, didn't play for an entire month in the midst of the season because their COVID outbreak was so bad. There was a lot of concern that they might not even be able to play all 56 of their games. They did end up finishing the season with all the games played, having to play Calgary a bunch of times at the end of the year. But it's just, there was a lot of other circumstances playing a role in Vancouver's season last year. And, it obviously wasn't a very good year, but I'm not willing to give them a pass. But I am willing to say that I think they're a lot better than what they showed last season. And I think we're going to see a bounce back performance from them this year. I don't know if they're going to be like a first place team or anything like that, but I do think they're going to play significantly better than they did last season. So obviously last year wasn't great, and they ended up making quite a few moves this offseason. There's a lot to talk about as far as the additions and subtractions go. Some big, one really big trade with the Arizona Coyotes, some free agent moves as well. On the addition side, they brought in defenseman Oliver Ekman-Larsson and forward Connor Garland from Arizona. They also signed Tucker Poolman in free agency from Winnipeg. They brought in forward Jason Dickinson from Dallas. They brought in backup goaltender Yaroslav Halak from the Bruins. They signed defenseman Luke Shen from Tampa Bay. And then they brought in depth players Phil DiGiuseppe and Brad Hunt, a forward and a defenseman, to kind of be call-up depth guys for this team this year. On the subtraction side of things, there were even more changes as far as guys leaving. Braden Holtby was bought out after one very rough season last year in Vancouver. He was a big free agent signing for them. He was supposed to, be that guy that tandems with Thatcher Demko and, helps Thatcher Demko, and it was a brutal year last year for Braden Holtby. So he was bought out and has since signed with Dallas. Longtime defenseman Alex Edler, who had up to this point spent his entire NHL career with Vancouver, he left in free agency for the LA Kings, and he also had a pretty rough season last year. They traded away Louis Eriksson, Jay Beagle, and Antoine Roussel, all to Arizona in the Ekman-Larsson-Garland deal that brought those guys in. So they get those contracts that they really needed to get off the books. They get them off the books. Eriksson, Beagle, and Roussel all to the Coyotes in that deal. Jake Virtanen was bought out, and he has some off-ice issues going on as well. But certainly wasn't performing on the ice either when he was playing. So he got bought out, and they've moved on from him. Jimmy Vesey, who I almost forgot played the end of last year with Vancouver, didn't really do much. He was not re-signed. Defenseman Jalen Chatfield was not re-signed. And then depth forwards Jace Howerluck, Travis Boyd, and Sven Barchi all were let go in free agency as well. So obviously, some pretty significant moves here. Obviously, the biggest one being the Ekman-Larsson-Garland deal that sent Eriksson, Beagle, and Roussel, plus draft picks to Arizona. Holtby and Virtanen getting bought out. The rest of the moves were kind of, depth guys. They brought in Halak to be the backup goaltender for Thatcher Demko. Well, hopefully that goes a little bit better than Holtby did. But, this team definitely was not afraid to make some changes this offseason. And obviously their biggest moves was the re-signings of Elias Pettersson and Quinn Hughes, both getting them locked up for the next few years. So moving on now, it is time to look at my projected roster for the Vancouver Canucks this year. And there's, I would say, a couple spots that might be up for grabs. Other than that, I think there's quite a bit locked in, but there are maybe a couple guys that could sneak into this opening night lineup. Up front, obviously, you've got your big guns, Elias Pettersson, Bo Horvat, Brock Besser, JT Miller, Connor Garland, Tanner Pearson, Nils Hoglander. He was a rookie last year. He's going to look to build off that. I have Vasily Podkolzin making the team. Everything I've seen and read about Vancouver is saying that he should be on the opening night roster and that Podkolzin has been good enough in the preseason to make the team, and he has a lot of obvious upside there. First round pick, 10th overall pick for them. So, I'm penciling him into the lineup for now. It's not official yet, I guess, but I would expect him to be making the Vancouver Canucks the big club this year. Jason Dickinson, Tyler Mott, Zach McEwen, those are kind of depth forwards. Brandon Sutter returns on a one-year deal. And then I have Matthew Highmore as the extra forward. I don't think they're going to waive him. I think they'll have him on the roster, but we'll have to wait and see. On the defensive side of things, obviously they've got Quinn Hughes. Now they have OEL. Tyler Myers is still there. They brought in Tucker Poolman. Jack Rathbone, from everything that I've read about Vancouver, is having a phenomenal preseason from what I can gather. So I definitely expect Rathbone to be on the NHL roster opening night and probably playing in the lineup opening night. Luke Shen they brought in from Tampa Bay. So Travis Hammonic is an interesting one. He hasn't opted out, but he is away from the team right now dealing with a personal matter. Don't really know exactly what's going on there. So I would say Hammonic is going to be on the roster, but I certainly doesn't look like he's going to be playing opening night. And then Oli Ulevy probably, I imagine, is going to make it, but they're kind of waiting on him still. I think he'll probably be an extra defenseman and then get put into the lineup if needed, if other guys are out. But I have them carrying 13 forwards and 8 defensemen to start the season, at least this year. In goal, it's pretty obvious. Thatcher Demko is your starter, and Jarro Halak is your backup goaltender, veteran guy coming in from Boston. As far as depth goes, they actually have quite a few depth guys that are call-ups ready throughout the year that are just kind of, they're not necessarily players that you would want making the roster right away, but they're perfectly good call-ups if needed and depth pieces that can fill in and be adequate in that role. And they have Alex Chason in camp on a PTO. We'll see if he ends up getting a contract or not. Obviously, that final decision hasn't been made yet with the preseason still going on, but Chason will be an interesting one to see if he does get a deal. They've got Justin Bailey, they've got Phil DiGiuseppe, Nick Paton, and there are some other forwards as well they have that could see NHL action this year on a call-up basis. On the back end, they've got, outside of those 8 that I have listed, they've got Brad Hunt and Madison Bowie. They've got a couple other guys that could be called up potentially as well. And in goal, I would imagine that their third goaltender is probably Michael DiPietro, but they really don't have much down in the AHL as far as guys that have NHL experience. So third goaltender might be a little bit up for grabs. They are certainly hoping that they don't need a third goaltender and that Demko and Halak will be the tandem all the way through with no issues. But if they did happen to need a third goalie, I'd imagine DiPietro would be the one getting the call up, but we'd have to wait and see on that. But that's my projected roster for Vancouver. Obviously, it's just a projection. There are a couple things here and there that could potentially change, but this is a team that I am definitely expecting to have a much better season than they did last year. They've got the talent to do it. They've got some big name forwards, some very talented forwards. They've got Hughes and OEL on the back end. Demko, I think, is a very good starting goaltender. They just need to actually play defense in front of them, which they didn't really do last year. This team has the potential to be a playoff team. There's no doubt about it. So Vancouver is going to be a very interesting team to watch this year and see if they can have that bounce back year that they are hoping for. I certainly think that they're going to be in the thick of that playoff race out in the Pacific Division, along with teams like Calgary and Seattle and LA, fighting for that playoff positioning out there. I think, Edmonton and Vegas pretty much going to be playoff teams. And then that 3, 4, 5, 6 area of the division, I think, is very much up for grabs. And Vancouver is one of those teams right in the midst of that fight for those 3, 4, 5, 6 spots. So, they definitely will be competing for a playoff spot. They're certainly going to be looking to have a better season than they did last year, and I certainly think that they have the talent in the roster capable of doing it. So we'll see what they end up doing, but that is my season preview for the Vancouver Canucks. Please don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, follow on social media. All those links are in the description. If you'd like to further support the channel, the links to our merchandise store, memberships, and donation link are down in the description as well. Keep spreading the word about this channel. Let's keep this thing growing. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll talk to you guys soon.